Welcome, everyone, to today's event, Environmental Benefits of Medium and Heavy-Duty Zero-Emission Vehicles Compared with Clean Bio and Renewable Fuel Vehicles, 2022 through 2032. During this event, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. To ask a question at any time, please submit the question via the chat box located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You may direct the question to all panelists. We encourage you to ask questions at any time during the presentation. Your questions will be addressed during Q&A at the end of the session. As a reminder, this event is being recorded. The recording and presentation will be available on the Diesel Technology Forum's website shortly after the live webinar, as well as links to the full study and infographics. I would now like to welcome Alan Schaefer, Executive Director of the Diesel Technology Forum. Alan?
Thank you, Josie. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome all of our participants today, particularly our friends in the media for joining us, as well as policymakers and other stakeholders, trucking associations, and those interested in the topics today relative to how we might chart a course for the future for medium and heavy duty vehicles as our nation looks to implement strategies to reduce greenhouse gases and control other kinds of emissions. We have, I think, some particularly interesting findings today we're excited to share with you. A few weeks ago, some of you may have seen some information come out from us that provides a snapshot of the role that diesel power is playing in today's commercial vehicle population. And this is, I think, fairly clear that diesel is the predominant technology in the heavy-duty trucking space. There's about 15 million or so commercial vehicles, class 3 through 8, and diesel power is a good 3/4 of those, 76%. And same on down the list for school buses and transit buses as well. So the technology that we're focused on today, advanced diesel technology, is really a mainstay of our commercial trucking industry here in the U.S. Looking more specifically at the region in question today and our nation by region, we look to find which population of new technology diesel vehicles are in operation today. That means that they are working today in each of these areas, and they are 2011 and newer generation vehicles. These are the vehicles that are equipped with the most advanced emissions control technology that includes particulate traps and selective catalytic reduction systems. Taken together, they allow these vehicles to operate with near zero emissions. And you can see by this map, the region that we're talking about today is a combination of the blue region in the Northeast and the sort of the tan region just below it. And the national average for the new technology vehicles in the population is 53%. And so you can get a sense that this region is scoring somewhere in the middle of that. In fact, if we look more closely here, we understand that about 6 out of the 10 states that we're looking at today actually are behind the national curve in terms of the adoption of newer generation of diesel. And what does that mean? It means that the vehicles on the road are typically older in this region and would benefit from some use of advanced technology to reduce their emissions. We've also provided a snapshot of what the electric vehicle population is in this region. And you can get a sense that the population of electric vehicles in these classes is still very small and growing. In round numbers, it's over about 3,300 vehicles. That's compared to about 1.6 million diesel vehicles in this region alone. So with that, our thoughts turn to what are the options for reducing emissions from this fleet of vehicles that we rely on for delivering our food and all of the things that we need in our daily lives. What are the strategies, the costs, and the benefits of doing that? There's a lot of discussion today about various fuels and technologies, including electrification and hydrogen and fuel cells. Today's study is going to look at some of those questions and provide you, I think, with some interesting answers about those technologies, as well as the use of renewable fuels and what they might bring to the table. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome our researchers from Stillwater Associates, and that's Gary Yao and Adam Schubert. Gary is the principal lead on this project, and Gary, thank you for your work here. And Gary has several decades of experience, both at the California Energy Commission and the Air Resources Board in California, doing this kind of analysis and work. So we really look forward to your presentation today and the release of this study. Take it away, Gary.
Okay, great. Need to get my screen here. Share. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
Okay, tell me when.
May want to try it again, Gary.
Okay. 2 times the charm, huh? Yep, you're right.
There we go. It's starting to come up and we see it.
Okay. How about now?
We're good to go.
Oh, yay. Hooray. Technology is wonderful. Well, good afternoon. Yes, I work for Stillwater Associates, and I did the majority of work on this report. It's fun stuff for me. I've been doing this for 35 years, analyzing vehicle and emission and alternate fuels for use in California for over 35 years. So it was fun work for me. Now, I work for Stillwater Associates. It's a fuels and transportation energy consulting firm that focuses on policy, technology development, and mergers and acquisitions. So in this report, we're quantifying the emission benefits of eliminating the oldest and dirtiest pre-2007 light, medium, and heavy-duty diesels that are still on the road today. And we're looking at these 3 scenarios shown here that I'll explain in the next slide. Now, I'm quantifying the NOx and PM and greenhouse gas reductions for these 3 scenarios, and I'm looking at the benefits that would be obtained in the 10 Northeastern states that have adopted the CARB-ZEV program. And of course, we'll look at the vehicle costs and the charger costs through this process. So here's how the vehicle replacement scenarios look. The first scenario is a business as usual diesel replacements. And this graph shows the vehicles replacements as they accumulate like 1 million miles and are retired. Now, this is a slow natural process as the diesel wears out due to decades of mileage accumulation, which is ultimately they would be replaced with newer technology diesels. That's the business as usual route. Now, the second incentive choice is immediately scrap all pre-2007 diesels and replace them with newer conventional diesels. And so that can be done real quickly within a year's time, and we'll look at those emission implications. And then, of course, we have the yellow and gray dotted lines, which show how EVs are envisioned to roll out at the same rate as diesels are naturally retired at first, and then accelerate over time as EV technology improves, and hopefully their costs are lower. And then for greenhouse gas reductions, we look at biofuels, which could be introduced anywhere along this path, and it can satisfy the full fleet of vehicles needs for greenhouse gas reductions. So what do the results look like? So the immediate observation for greenhouse gas reductions is we can get more than three times greenhouse gas reductions with the biofuels, the 100% renewable fuel used right away. That should be no surprise. Then we also could use B20 fuels. And that too was surprising that it matched the greenhouse gas reductions of electric vehicles that were charged from the US mix. And I'll say that all of the emission analysis for the vehicle side was using the latest GREET 2021 emission values. Now, perhaps the second strongest argument for electric vehicles is their 0 PM emissions. So for this study, we looked at the Northeastern cities that monitor and report their particulate matter to EPA. And so I plotted the cleanest and the dirtiest cities here to bound the argument of the analysis. And you'll note that all the cities' PM levels are lower than the health-based air quality standard. So consequently, EVs would not provide health benefits in these areas based on the EPA's past health-based determination. Now, the National Ambient Air Quality Standard for PM is likely to be lower to 10 micrograms per cubic meter down here. And so we looked at the new technology diesel PM emissions versus EVs with this in mind. So here's a new technology diesel that was introduced in 2007 vintage years, and enhanced later in 2010 with lower NOx engines. What's critical to know is that this new technology diesels introduced in 2007 reduces the PM emissions 99.8% lower than 1990 levels, which is a huge win for everyone. And it's the best kept secret for the last 15 years. I mean, it's really brought PM emissions down low. So this is the ARB's estimated median tailpipe emissions for particulate matter. And over the 3 years of this technology was introduced, it shows that the tailpipe emissions are now reaching atmospheric PM levels, which is shown in this red box here. So now when we look forward at diesel and electric vehicle comparisons, we have to consider that both technologies can provide localized 0 PM air quality benefits, albeit the diesel will be at a varied time, as I'll show next. So how does an electric vehicle PM and diesel PM compare? So these top 3 lines show the GREET estimated recharging power plant levels for EVs. The top gray is cold. The green line is the US average mix for charging EVs. And the blue dotted line is the California average power plant emission rates, which is out of scope, but just to provide context to show the range and the lowest range possible for power plants as of 2022. Now these bottom 4 lines are the diesel PM rates. Now the blue and gray is what EPA estimates as the median PM rates for diesels as determined in the laboratory using laboratory air. Now the orange and the orange-yellow lines represent the same diesels operated on road with atmospheric air pollution consumed by the diesel engine. And note how they're operating at or around 0 or below 0, depending on the age and the fuel economy of the diesel. Now, biofuels use will only enhance diesel's lower NOx levels, which is not part of this evaluation on this aspect. Now, the third reason for EVs are being sought after is for their lower NOx emissions. And this is the one remaining advantages EVs have over new technology diesels today. But does lower NOx provide clean air benefits for the Northeastern states? That's the question we're looking for. So according to environmental policy, reducing NOx will lead to clean air as defined by meeting the federal ozone standard. So again, we looked at the Northeastern states that are reporting pollution to EPA, and we find that over 66 cities' data are demonstrating ozone compliance. So these cities would not benefit from EVs' lower NOx emissions because these cities already have clean air regarding ozone levels, and they're trending cleaner. But there were down here in these 2 areas, Connecticut and New Jersey, that were above the ozone standard. And these 2, like theoretically, would benefit from electric vehicles' lower NOx emissions. And so, however, so we looked at the Connecticut. Here's Connecticut's historical NO2 levels versus ozone. NO2 is the surrogate used for reporting NOx in the regulatory world. And so we can see since 1995, there's been a 55% reduction in NO2, but we still have the same average ozone levels. And at the extremes, from the far right to the far left, we have the same ozone levels, even though it's a 94% NO2 reduction. And worse on top of all of this is that we have more ozone exceedances in 2021 in the blue dots than we have in orange dots in 1995. So what this is telling us at the bottom line is that the Connecticut city's atmospheric data does not support clean air ozone benefits with the reduction of lower NOx EVs. That's the NOx signal here. And moving on to the economics. So we all know that EVs have a higher cost based on light duty EVs, but these costs in the medium and heavy duty world are significantly greater based on the higher batteries, much larger batteries requirement and the much larger recharging system. I mean, a $45,000 charger cost is significant. So these bottom lines, these values here are from the most recent California and other states transaction prices and reported prices for the vehicles and for the infrastructure. In fact, California is reporting $54,000 for the chargers for the school bus program. So these are a bit underrated, but they're reasonably conservative. And what we'll end up with is the light medium light and medium duty vehicles have 2.5 times higher costs, and the heavy duty EVs have 4 times higher costs. Those are significant. And so then the report concludes that we're finding that the biofuel new technology diesels provide 3 times greater greenhouse gas reductions than electric vehicles, and that new technology diesels provide more PM reductions. And that the EVs, they do have lower NOx emissions, but does that provide benefits? And we show that the 66 Northeastern states, they don't need the additional NOx reduction for ozone attainment. And where it was available for Connecticut, it doesn't show that it correlates with clean air. And then we're left with ultimately the bottom line that on average, EVs cost 3 times more than new technology diesel. And that is a quick synopsis of the work. Ready to take questions?
Thank you very much, Gary. And please submit your questions in the chat. We'll be happy to accept those as they come in. Gary, I wanted to, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I wanted to ask, we've really looked at the 10 Northeastern states here as our project specified, but what can we say to generalize these results beyond those 10 states to other parts of the U.S.?
Well, I'm hesitant because the PM for most cities is very clean. So if the ozone, the NOx to ozone is a varied issue depending on the location. So it's a little challenging to say that. It's important to look at each area specifically before I make a comment. But the fact that diesels are so clean, I mean, 99.8% lower PM. In fact, in the report, it'll cite that it's 100.2% lower when you move the vehicles from the laboratory to the on-road pollution levels. That's a huge, and that happens everywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Let's see, questions coming in. We will, someone asked about the slides. Yes, they will be made available, as we said at the outset, and the recorded version of today's event as well. Let's see. We have a question here. What is the feasibility of renewable diesel fully displacing, conventional diesel? In other words, can the projected supply meet the projected demand?
Adam, can you do that?
Yeah, I'll take that, Alan. You cannot replace 100% of the petroleum diesel with renewable diesel overnight. We run out of feedstocks. However, what you can do is make a very substantial displacement in the urban areas where you have the highest concentration of ozone and particulate exceedances. So you can make the biggest difference where the vast majority of population lives.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question coming in. Can you please tell more about the definition of new technology?
Well, so the new technology at the basis was a 2007 introduction of diesel soot filters, which reduce hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter greater than 95%. In fact, diesel particulate matter, believe it or not, is reduced 99.99997% on the particle phase. And so what we're actually measuring in the lab is we're measuring the hydrocarbons and the sulfates that come out and precipitate out on the filter to give it mass, and we could consider that a mass. But the filtration efficiency of particle filters are enormous. And they work or they fail. They plug up and solves the problem. The engine won't start, or they keep operating, or they crack and they rattle and they make noises. The failure rate is extremely low. And then in 2010, we have lower NOx diesel engines that came about throughout all. And this is nationwide, these technologies. 2007 nationwide particulate matter, 2010 low NOx diesel engines. Alan, you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, just to clarify that the 2007 was the PM introduction, and then 2010 added the selective catalytic reduction SCR systems that effectively reduce NOx down to near zero levels, as well as the particulate benefit that you outlined.
Mhm.
And that was the slide I showed earlier, showing that 53% nationwide, on average, 53% of all vehicles, commercial vehicles registered and operating in the U.S. today are of that newest generation, 2010 and 2011 and later model year. So they are fully equipped with particulate filters and selective catalytic reduction systems.
And actually, that number is even higher. That's an accurate number for registered vehicle counts. But if you look at the vehicle miles traveled of the fleet, the newer fleets drive more. It's probably around 70% of the vehicle miles traveled on the road today have those new technologies.
Sure.
Yeah, I did that for California analysis. It was interesting to play with.
I just wanted to clarify that the previous commenter, Adam Schubert, is also with Stillwater Associates and was part of this research work as well. And Adam answered the question about renewable fuels. So just to clarify that. Here we have another question. Did the study look at mileage or hours of operation? And did you look at strictly transportation diesel use, or did you also include farm equipment?
Mileage was the metric used, and on-road only, no agricultural engines.
Here's a question. What percentage of vocational construction diesels are new technology diesels? We did not differentiate in our analysis, which was done with S&P Global Mobility. I should point out that we looked at class 3 through 8, which could include a wide range of vehicles, light, small box trucks, the heaviest duty pickup trucks, on up to medium duty box trucks, on up to the class 8 tractor trailer size vehicles. So the construction sector probably has some of all of those kinds of vehicles in it. And so I don't have any particular indication about whether or not the construction and vocational diesels are newer or older, as it were, than the national fleet. I'd have to believe that they're pretty close to the national average. A copy of the report will be made available. We have a link on our website right now with our press release from today that includes how to download the full report, and that'll also be linked with the materials after today's session. Here's a question. I've heard CARB refer to NOx as a precursor to PM. Could that be factored into the plot you shared earlier showing PM contribution from EVs fueled by various power plant mixes versus diesels?
Yeah, I can handle that. Yes, CARB has made that statement. But as we showed, the vast majority, well, all the cities were within PM compliance of the existing standard, and going forward, there could be an issue there. Other researchers have not confirmed or agreed with the finding that CARB has. The weekday ozone research did not find that the NOx was contributing to PM atmospherically. So there's a bit of unsettled science there. But it's worth considering that the fact that ARB may have a point.
Thank you. Question, are incentives available to upgrade from old tech to new tech diesels?
What was that?
Are incentives available to upgrade from old technology to new technology diesels? I'll take an initial shot at that. There are funds available through the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, which this year the budgetary request from the Biden administration is $150 million. Some of that could be designated towards replacing old generation diesels with newer ones, although it is a competitive process that also would see various applications for using natural gas or other fuels other than diesel. So yes, there are some incentives available. They're not exclusive to upgrade from old technology to new technology diesels. It's really scored on a case-by-case basis, at least in the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act program.
And is that open to the public, or is that open to municipalities and government agencies, or what? Do you
That's
know?
the DERA program is administered by EPA, and both public and private fleets have been eligible and have been awarded funds to modernize and upgrade their fleets over the last decade.
And the word upgrade, I hope that doesn't mean to convert over. I think that means to buy a newer diesel technology.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. The DERA program is also quite broad, and it does, for example, has funded locomotive engine repowers, marine vessel engine replacements. So when we use the term upgrade or modernize, we're speaking broadly, not only on highway, but also on off-highway applications, at least for the DERA program.
Okay.
And it's a subsequent question about how about state incentives to modernize. At the moment, I'm not aware of any states that are doing that, although every state has some DERA funds and some states have some of their own funds that have, I'm sure, enabled some of the transition from older technology vehicles to newer ones. I just not aware of anything, a substantial national program today. Let's see, we have another couple of questions here. Are there any studies which evaluate PM contribution from tire wear? Would ZEVs contribute more to such PM than equivalent diesels because of the increased weight?
Most certainly they would, Nicholas. Yeah, added weight definitely relates to higher PM. It's not only tire wear, it's abrasion wear of the asphalt and tire road surfaces. I think that's 20 or 30% of the PM contribution on the roadways. I believe diesel particulate matter is around 12-15% when they measure it near the road. So everything else is from everything else. And wind, pollen dust, windblown dust, and mostly re-entrained dust from tires, brakes, and abraded wear is really what's going on in the particulate matters. And that's why we change air filters every 30,000 miles or so.
The point is that, with particulate filters on diesels, the tailpipe emissions are actually lower than what comes from the brakes and tire wear.
Yeah.
Another question here. Did your analysis consider aging of the after treatments and degradation with use of emissions controls? And also, did you do any research into maintenance requirements by the state for emissions controls?
On the first one, I was using the ARB surveillance data for the particulate matter, which captures all the age deterioration of the vehicles. They were tested up to 480,000 miles, I think, was the highest mileage vehicle that was tested. So it does capture that. Diesel particulate matter doesn't deteriorate that significantly. There's actually more variability just in the test of vehicle to vehicle on diesel particulate matter, but the age is not a deterioration. It's not a critical one on PM only. And the maintenance requirements, did not look into the maintenance requirements by the state. No.
Okay. Here's a question. Is there so any comment on the greenhouse gas part of this? I guess is the first part of that question.
Yeah, I think what we can say is that with the replacement of diesels, that scenario, and using biofuels, you get an immediate greenhouse gas reduction with the vehicles that are already on the road and with new diesels, whereas with electric, you have to wait for the time to replace them. And in our scenario, we assumed we could replace all the diesel all the diesel fuel with renewable diesel today, and versus the time frame that Gary laid out at the beginning of his presentation for turning over the fleet to electrics. And that's what gave us the 3x improvement, basically because you can make that difference with the vehicles that are already on the road.
Yeah, and I conservatively reported it. We could delay the biofuels introduction by 2 years and still be within the 3 times higher greenhouse gas reductions. So it's extremely robust result. And this is always true. If it's fuel always outperforms vehicle introductions, even if it's conventional introductions of vehicles. It's just you can put in fuels so much quicker, about 5 times quicker than you can vehicle migration.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see, any other questions coming in from our attendees? Make sure that I caught all these.
Oh, and I guess back to the deterioration, my graphs do show that EPA uses the first 3 years and years thereafter, the PM deterioration. That's in the graph, so you can see that. So we do capture that aspect, as well as my aspect of the on-road pollution consumption.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments or questions from our attendees today? I don't want to rush things along here. We have a few others coming in. What is the cost of clean diesel relative to standard diesel?
What is that? Is that fuel or vehicles?
Yeah. So for so renewable diesel, the cost delta depends on where you are. So in most of the country, or all the country, you get RINs, 1.7 D4 RINs for every gallon credit because of the renewable fuel standard, and you get $1 per gallon blender's tax credit for each gallon of renewable diesel or biodiesel that's blended. If you're in California or Oregon, where they have low carbon fuel standard, you have additional credits available, which is why you see virtually all the renewable diesel used in the U.S. going to those markets. In those markets where the LCFS programs are, you have fleets that are operating on 100% renewable diesel because the credits make it cost effective for them to do so. It's an economic choice of the fleet operators in that regulatory space, but in the rest of the country, there is a cost difference. We did not compare that in this study with the cost of electricity. That varies significantly market to market, and so that's a dimension we did not cover.
Adam, there's also a request to please define renewable diesel.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we looked at 2 different types of renewable fuel. One is biodiesel, which more people are familiar with. That is what's been in the market for many years now, which it takes fats, oils, and greases, reacts it with methanol to produce a molecule that still has some oxygen in it, but is generally similar to petroleum diesel, and it can be blended at 5% or 20% in petroleum diesel. Been in the market for many years. Renewable diesel takes the same feedstocks, but instead of reacting it with methanol, it's reacted with hydrogen in something very similar to petroleum refining to produce a molecule that has no oxygen in it. So it can be used at concentrations up to 100% of the fuel because you have a product that looks virtually identical to petroleum diesel. And that is widely used in California. That's about 25% of the diesel pool in California right now. And production of renewable diesel in the U.S. is very rapidly growing due to the incentives by the California, Oregon, and other state programs.
And actually on my slide, when I'm saying renewable diesel, 100% renewable diesel and biodiesel, that can be made 3 different ways: 100% renewable diesel, 80% renewable diesel, and 95% renewable diesel, with the balance being made up by biodiesel. Those are commercially done here in America.
We have another question here. When you were talking about PM emissions from the engine being much lower, 10 or 15% than the total vehicle, was that PM10 or PM2.5?
I did the vehicle. Here's a disconnect of the industry. The vehicle side talks and are regulated at PM10. So when I'm talking about vehicles, I'm talking about PM10. When I'm talking about ambient air standards, I'm using PM2.5. Sorry about that, but that's the inconsistencies we have. Now, PM2.5 is generally generally around 60 to 70% of PM10 on a mass basis.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Other questions coming in?
I would like to answer the question about the cost to compare electricity versus diesel fuel.
Of course.
So at no extra cost to the diesel technology forum, I spent a lot of time and effort quantifying the diesel fuel cost versus electricity prices. And so it's in the report. I encourage you to look it over. I improved upon the energy efficiency of diesels versus the electricity to have the most fair and honest comparison of diesel fuel prices to electricity. And all you have to do is put in, there's a table there that you can put in your vehicle fuel economy and your diesel fuel prices. And if you know what electricity prices would be for a charger, you could put those in there too, and you can see how they do compare against each other. And there is a graph in there, and you can see it's not a slam dunk on energy savings. It's electricity is lower cost because it doesn't have road taxes yet, and and as electricity becomes more renewable content, it will become it always becomes more expensive. So you can see how it plays out. It's fairly competitive. In fact, in California, I was at a public utilities hearing, and heavy duty transit bus operators of electric vehicles were pleading with the California PUC to lower the electricity prices on electricity used for their vehicles because they were too expensive compared to diesel. This was 4 years ago.
Thank you for that. I just want to call everyone's attention to the chat box. We have posted a link to our website, which contains the press release and a copy of the full study that we've been discussing here this afternoon. Are there any additional questions coming in for our research team? One is there's a question about what's the availability of V100 throughout the country. Adam or Gary, is that something you want to speak to?
So currently, biodiesel represents, I believe, about getting close to 5% of the overall U.S. diesel pool. Renewable diesel is smaller but growing rapidly and expected over the next couple of years to surpass biodiesel production in the U.S.
Yeah, question here. Do you expect the tax credits to be extended beyond 2022? I assume that's tax credits for the fuel on the renewable fuel side.
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at that. So, yeah, the biodiesel blender tax credit, BTC, has been on the books for many years, and it's lapsed several times and been reinstated several times. Last couple times that's happened, it's been the reinstatements happened retroactively after it's lapsed for a year or two. It's due to expire at the end of this year, and as with many tax provisions, they have end dates that Congress chooses to put on them and are subject to and get brought up in what are known as extenders bills, usually late in the year. And sometimes they pass, sometimes they take a while. Our expectation is that in order to get, since these are brought through Congress as a package covering, satisfying a broad range of interests within the fuels community and the entire economy, the strong support for the BTC by the Midwest states means it's very hard to pass any kind of extenders measure without support of the farm states, which means you need to have the BTC to get that to pass. And as a result, while it may take Congress a while to get it done, we expect that the BTC will get extended ultimately, but would not be at all surprised if it's allowed to lapse for a while before that happens.
Thank you for that, Adam. Any other questions at this point? We are happy to accept those after the fact as well. You can send those along to us here at the DTF. But I want to thank our research team at Stillwater, Gary and Adam, for the work that they've done. We have put together an infographic that is available on the DTF website, as well as part of the link to the press release on today's research. And you can download that and review that just the same. I think just as a few final thoughts from the Diesel Technology Forum perspective here. I think, first we certainly recognize the opportunity and need we have to help tackle the challenge of global climate change. And what this study, I think, shows us is that there are many ways to achieve carbon reductions. Some of them can occur faster than others at a lower cost than others, and that we should have a very open mind and accept carbon reduction however we can get it. And particularly when we can achieve also clean air benefits, particularly in urban areas and disadvantaged communities, which have been seeking rapid change. This is something we need to consider about how the role of accelerating the turnover to the new generation of diesel and the use of renewable fuels can really contribute to significant progress. So with that, I just want to thank everyone again for being here. I want to recognize the members of the Diesel Technology Forum who makes today's research possible. They're leaders in the field of advanced diesel engine and other technology and fuels as well. So thank you to them. And with that, I want to again thank you for all of our participants from the media, policymakers, others who have joined us today. And we will be posting this recorded event and presentation on our website, and you'll see that link on the homepage here very shortly. But with that, thank you again, and I wish everyone a good day. Stay cool, and we look forward to talking with you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay.